Think about the most important argument you've ever had with someone close to you. You remember exactly what they said, the words, the tone, the look on their face. You've replayed it so many times it feels like footage. You could describe it right now, and it would feel like testimony. They remember it completely differently, not a few details off, not a slightly different interpretation, a fundamentally different version of the same moment. Same room, same two people, completely different memory. And here's the part that should stop you cold. You are both right. Not about what happened, only one version can be accurate, but about what you remember. You are both telling the truth about what your brain is showing you, which means one of you is living inside a memory that was never real, and you have no way of knowing which one of you it is. Right now, you have memories stored in your head that feel as real as anything you've ever lived, and some of them are completely fabricated, not distorted, not misremembered, fabricated, built from nothing by a brain that had a gap to fill and filled it. Science proved this in a laboratory, repeatedly, in studies that should have changed everything about how we treat memory, in courtrooms, in relationships, in the stories we tell about who we are. It didn't change much, because the result is too uncomfortable. Because if your brain can manufacture a memory you cannot distinguish from a real one, then you have never been as certain about anything as you thought you were. And by the end of this video, you're going to think about that argument differently. Maybe the person too. You think that when something happens, something vivid, something significant, your brain records it, like a tape, like a photograph. You pull up the file and play it back. It's an intuitive model, clean, logical, and completely wrong. In 1932, a British psychologist named Frederick Bartlett asked a group of university students to read a Native American folktale called The War of the Ghosts. It was deliberately unfamiliar. Canoes, war cries, ghosts, a death with no clear cause. Then he asked them to retell it. After 15 minutes, then days, then weeks, then months. Here is what happened. The ghosts disappeared. Students decided that was probably just a metaphor. The canoes became boats. Strange plot elements were reordered into a recognizable sequence. The story got shorter and neater with every retelling, shaped into what a 1932 English student expected a normal story to look like. They were absolutely certain they remembered it correctly. Bartlett called this reconstructive memory. The brain doesn't store memories like recordings. It stores fragments, and when you remember, it reassembles those fragments into something coherent. It fills in the gaps, it finishes the picture, and it does so in a way that feels logical and comfortable. Not accurate, comfortable. Because every time you remember something, you are not retrieving a recording, you are rebuilding it. And every time you do that, you risk changing it. Scientists call this memory reconsolidation. When you recall a memory, it briefly becomes unstable, like a document you've opened for editing. New details can slip in. Something you heard, something you read, someone else's version of events. Then the memory closes, slightly different from before. This happens every single time you remember. The most precious memory of your life. You have already rewritten it hundreds of times, and you don't know it. The brain doesn't just distort what was there. It can generate entirely new memories of things that never existed at all. In 1995, cognitive psychologist Elizabeth Loftus gave 24 participants a list of 4 childhood memories. 3 were real, provided by family members. The 4th she made up. As a child, the person had gotten lost in a shopping mall, cried for a long time, and was found by an older man who walked them back to their family. This never happened, not to a single one of them. 25% of participants didn't just accept the false memory, they expanded it. They described the color of the old man's shirt, the smell of the mall, how they had cried. Some rated this invented memory as more vivid than actual events from their real childhoods. Read that again. More vivid than things that actually happened to them. When told one memory was fabricated and asked to identify which, 5 of the 24 chose wrong. They pointed to a real memory as the fake, and held on to the implanted fiction as truth. You would have done the same thing. The researchers didn't select unusual people. They selected people exactly like you. Because to the brain, there is no difference between "I remember this" and "I believe this." In the summer of 1984, a 22-year-old named Jennifer Thompson was raped at knife point in her apartment in Burlington, North Carolina. During the attack, She made a conscious decision to memorize her attacker's face. She studied every feature she could. She was doing everything you would have told her to do. 3 days later, she picked Ronald Cotton from a photo lineup, then from a live lineup. She was, in her own words, 100% certain. Ronald Cotton was convicted. Life in prison plus 50 years. He was 22 years old. 10.5 years later, DNA evidence exonerated him. The real attacker, Bobby Poole, had actually been brought into the same courtroom during Cotton's second trial. Jennifer Thompson looked at Poole that day and felt nothing. Sitting in the same room as the man who had actually attacked her, her memory still told her it was Cotton. She was not lying. She was completely certain, from beginning to end. Her certainty was the problem. Eyewitness misidentification has played a role in approximately 69% of cases where DNA testing later proved someone innocent. Not because anyone lied, because someone was sure they remembered. Stress doesn't make memory more accurate. It makes it more vivid. But vividness and accuracy are not the same thing. When a person sees a weapon, the brain fixates on it, so powerfully that the face of the person holding it stays blurry, unregistered. Then, in a courtroom, the eyewitness says with complete confidence, "That's the man. I remember his face." And that certainty sounds like evidence. Because to them, it is evidence. They just remember something their brain assembled from fragments, filled in with what seemed probable, and crystallized into a belief that no longer gets questioned. Sometimes false memories don't form in one person. They form in thousands, simultaneously, about exactly the same thing, without any coordination. In 2009, a woman named Fiona Broom posted something online. She had a vivid memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. She remembered the news coverage, his widow's speech, the unrest that followed. Mandela died in 2013. He served as president of South Africa and lived 23 years after the death Broom so clearly remembered. When she wrote about it, hundreds responded, then thousands, all certain of the same death. None of them had spoken to each other before. Psychologists have a specific explanation for why it happened with Mandela in particular. His name was Steve Biko, another South African anti-apartheid activist, imprisoned at the same time. And Biko did die in prison in 1977. Same era, same cause, same prison system. The brain filed them in adjacent folders. When it tried to retrieve Mandela, it pulled Biko's folder by mistake, then built an entire memory around that error. News footage, a widow's speech, unrest in the streets. None of it happened. All of it felt real. This is what psychologists call a source monitoring error. The brain remembers a real event, but loses track of who it happened to. It does this so smoothly, so automatically, that the person never notices the seam. You've done this too. Every time you told a story and got a detail wrong. Every time you were certain something happened on a Tuesday and it was a Thursday. The machinery that failed those thousands of people is the same machinery running inside you right now. You have a memory of being hurt by someone. You remember the words. You remember exactly how it happened. The person you remember as the one who hurt you, they remember it differently. And they are not lying either. You were both there. You are both certain. You both remember. You just remember different versions of something that only happened once. Memory prioritizes coherence over accuracy. The brain needs your version of yourself to hold together. So memories that don't fit get quietly edited. Details that don't reflect well on you get dimmer. Details that justify you get sharper. This isn't a character flaw, it's architecture. It means the arguments you've replayed 100 times, the ones where you know exactly what was said, exactly who was wrong. Those arguments are being replayed by the other person too, with equal certainty, with equal detail, in a version where they are just as right as you are in yours. And the most disturbing part, you cannot feel the difference. A false memory is not a vague sense. It feels exactly like a real one. Same clarity, same inner voice that says, "I know what happened. I was there." There is no internal alarm. The filing system doesn't flag the edited documents. None of this erases what you have lived through. The pain was real. The love was real. Science is not saying your life is fiction. It is saying the version of that life you carry in your head is not a recording. It's a narrative, rebuilt every time you think about it. Shaped by who you were at each moment of reconstruction, by what you needed the story to mean. Now go back to the kitchen, you and your sister, the same morning. Two completely different memories, both vivid, both certain. At the start of this video, that felt like a problem with one of you, but now you know it's not. Both of your brains were filling in what they didn't have, with what made sense, and what each of you needed that moment to mean. Neither of you was lying. Neither of you had a bad memory. You were both just human, and you still are. If this changed something about how you see your own mind, hit like. Subscribe if you want to understand how your brain actually works.